Some ongoing neighborhood complaints about it being a nuisance location. Then it prompted us to really take a deep look at what had been going on. Particularly about 80 incidents involving that required our involvement as a sheriff's office. From 2017 to 2018, over 80 incidents, and then of course that shooting that happened in August of 2018. In September of 2018, or the months leading up to that, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office Special Victims Unit and some of our covert deputies began a long-term investigation at Club MGM. Going into the location in an undercover capacity, making prostitution cases, making narcotics cases, which led us to believe that there was something much darker going on and a lot more in depth than what we had even expected at that point. On September 13th of 2018, we executed a search warrant at MGM, at the MGM Cabaret. Once there, we identified several suspects that we believed were involved in human trafficking. That night, we also came into contact with a suspect named Eric Taylor, who was accompanied by a 16-year-old female juvenile who admitted to working at MGM. That 16-year-old female juvenile really was the key to a lot of what has transpired since then, and of course, one of the main reasons that we're up here today. In developing that case further, and let me just say, our SVU unit has done an outstanding job of working with that victim of human trafficking and getting more information on some of the establishments here locally that were hiring this young lady to dance, but also to perform sex acts for hire out of their establishments. And so as this investigation has continued to unfold, and I say continued to unfold because this is not the finish line here. This case is very much ongoing, but we did want to come out and present you all with an update of where we are to this point. And I'll let the executive director speak more in depth as to one of the locations in question, Blush, that's here locally in San Antonio, that we were able to link to having employed this young lady, and which is leading to TABC taking some action on them. And I'll let him elaborate more on that.
Great. Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. Again, I'm Bentley Nettles. I'm the Executive Director for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. I've got Chief Kirkendall here, my Chief of Law Enforcement. Also Major Mark Min from the San Antonio office here. And Ron Swenson from our Special Investigative Unit. All critical in this. First of all, I want to thank all y'all for coming. Also thank the Sheriff and his deputies for their work in this case. This is a historic event for the TABC because this is the first permit that we canceled in Texas for human trafficking, and one we want to continue to do going forward. We could not do that, we would not be here today without the hard and good police work of the Sheriff's Office and also the help of the Fire Marshal. So I want to make sure that we're recognizing all their work. The Sheriff covered a lot of the facts. But of course, we're the regulated alcohol beverage industry in Texas. So we work these cases all across the state. Matter of fact, this case has led us to other parts of the state. We're very fortunate to be able to work with quality deputies like we have here in Bezar County to do the criminal side of the case. Because what we do is administrative. Our agents can walk into any permitted location in the state of Texas without any requirement, simply because they're in the alcohol beverage industry business. That allows us to go and ask questions. We go and do undercover operations there. We can also make them open our books for us. It's a privilege to be in the alcohol beverage industry business in Texas, and we want it to continue to be that way. This action by canceling the permit for Blush puts them out of business. It will make it safer here in San Antonio, safer here in Bezar County, and ultimately safer in Texas. We want to send the message to those criminals out there that think that they can bring juveniles and take our children and use them in this way and put them in employment in strip clubs and businesses and our permitted locations, say you're not welcome here and we're going to find you and we're going to put you out of business. I think that's pretty much all I had, other than once again, our administrative authority that is kind of unique to the TABC leverages off of the good work of the Sheriff's Office here in Bezar County. because without that, we would not be able to take this step. We get a lot of these accusations and we're not able to do anything with them because unfortunately, under state law, and we've been talking to the Attorney General Ken Paxton about this, you have to have an outcry. When it involves a minor, a child, we don't have to have an outcry. So that was one way we're able to get to this case and take these actions.
So let me back up a little bit also and talk about one of our other main partners in this endeavor, the Fire Marshal's Office. You may be wondering why the Fire Marshal's Office has a part in this. Well, they were a very big part of this from the onset, and I'll introduce Chris Lopez here in just a little bit. But what they allow us to do is they've got certain knowledge, certain powers that we may not have as a sheriff's office. They're able to come in and look at are these people up to fire code, and quite frankly, they were at the onset of this investigation instrumental in helping us to shut down MGM to the point that they did. So I'll bring up Chris Lopez now to talk to you about his perspective on this case. Chris, come on up, sir.
As the sheriff said, we do kind of hold a unique place in these types of investigations. We are very pleased to be able to assist the sheriff's office and other law enforcement agencies throughout Bexar County. Whenever we have any type of event that occurs, whether it's a fire, special investigation such as this, it takes just basically a phone call, and we step up. We work with the criminal investigations divisions of all of these different agencies. In this particular case, we're very pleased to be able to offer our expertise. As the sheriff said, we have a code enforcement section of our office in the fire arson explosive investigative section. Our investigators work across all lines. It doesn't matter if it's a bomb, if it is a case like this, we have statutory authority to be able to do and work with these folks to help. The particulars of this case, absolutely, that building was to the point that it was really uninhabitable. There were a lot of code violations that truly, if someone had come to the fire marshal's office to try to open that as a commercial establishment, they would have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring that building up to code. That by itself is really enough to turn folks like that off, to where they don't want to spend that kind of money, and a lot of times it would put somebody out of business if they were made to spend that kind of money to bring the building up to code. In this particular case, the city of Von Army did and has since, after the investigation, they passed a city ordinance that does not allow sexual-oriented businesses within so many feet, and I believe the number is 500 feet of a residential structure. So this particular business itself, based on that city ordinance, is not going to be able to reopen. So I would say that that's a win also. Even if they didn't have that, they would still have to come to us. And again, I don't believe that that particular structure itself would have been worth spending that kind of money to bring up to code. So I will, whenever the sheriff is done, be here if you guys have any code-related questions that you might want to ask, or anything as far as our involvement. I'd be glad to answer. Thank you.
So we'll open it to whatever questions you might have, and I know you'll want some Spanish as well, Antonio, so we'll do that here in just a little bit.
When this happened back in the fall, there were allegations that there were other girls involved, maybe 10 other girls. What can you tell us about the number of cases or number of victims that might be out there?
Well, we know there are other victims involved in this. The question is do they want to provide us with the information? Many times, and in any human trafficking investigation, finding and identifying victims is the easy part. It's getting that victim, convincing that victim to get themselves out of that life, to let them know that there's something else beyond that life, that it benefits them more to give us the information and to help us out with what it is. So that's where we're at with many of these other victims, is making sure that we get the information that we need from them.
How was that 16-year-old girl the one who really led to all this? How's she doing?
Well, to this day, she's not in custody. So, my understanding is that on and off, she's returning back into that life. That's the tough thing for us is that many times these young ladies have been literally brainwashed to the point where they see nothing wrong with that. Or they may have been smuggled in from another country where, well, you know, I'd be doing this anyway if I were in that other country, so what's wrong with it? And so we have to convince them that, look, you're worth more than that as a human being, and we just need to be able to help them see another way of doing things.
And what about Taylor? I understand he's no longer in jail, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. He's bonded out of jail, but I certainly wouldn't rule out additional charges on him and several other folks here. And I'll go a step further than that. I certainly wouldn't rule out other establishments having cause for concern on their licensing.
That was my other question for this gentleman here, is if this is the first case in which you all have been able to play this kind of role, I just wonder, and I'm sure the public would wonder, how many other places like this are there out there?
So I know when we interviewed the 16-year-old that she identified that she had worked at several other locations. So those are under investigation also. And this led across the state to other cities, and there are locations there that are under investigation.
What do you think about that, sir?
Well, I don't think this is what we want our children in. And this is not the type of businesses that we want to welcome here to Texas. So our goal is to put them out of business. So there are 54,000 some odd permitted locations in the state of Texas. The majority of them are good people. They want to comply with the rules of the Alcohol Beverage Code, which is a fairly complex code and law, and we try to help them with that. But there are those, my boss, the chairman, seems about 5%, that don't want to follow our rules. They want to treat it like it's the saloons in the Old West days, and they do everything they can out of it that's illegal. We're going to find those, and we're going to make cases against them, and we're going to put them out of the alcohol beverage industry in Texas.
Can you elaborate more?
¿Cómo empezó?
Este caso empezó en 2017. Entre 2017 y 2018 había aproximadamente 80 llamadas a esta cantina MGM Cabaret, donde nuestros oficiales tuvieron que responder a esas llamadas en ese lugar. Entonces, en septiembre del 2018, nuestros oficiales trabajando encubierto en esa cantina, ellos empezaron a trabajar, hicieron muchos casos ahí por prostitución y también por drogas. El día 13 de septiembre de 2018, nuestros oficiales ejecutaron una orden de reviso en esa cantina. Trabajamos con el Fire Marshal del condado Bexar también. Ellos, trabajando con nosotros, ellos lograron cerrar la cantina esa, y desde esa noche nosotros nos encontramos con una señorita de 16 años de edad, que ella estaba con un sospechoso, en este caso Eric Taylor. Esa muchacha nos dijo que ella era víctima de traficando de seres humanos, no nomás en esa cantina, pero en varias cantinas. Entonces nosotros empezamos a trabajar con TABC, el policía estatal, que se encargan de estas cantinas y lugares que tienen esa licencia para el licor. Ellos empezaron a trabajar en ese caso y logramos cerrar esa cantina, pero también ahora están trabajando en otra cantina que se llama Blush, que está aquí en San Antonio, que ellos les están quitando la licencia a esa cantina. Entonces nosotros les decimos a todos que vamos a seguir trabajando en este caso, no nomás en este caso, pero en otros similares. Y si hay otras cantinas que andan trabajando en este negocio de traficando en seres humanos, les vamos a quitar la licencia, les vamos a cerrar las cantinas y vamos a seguir nuestro trabajo hasta que cerramos todos estos lugares.
Taylor está ahorita libre, bajo fianza, tenemos entendido.
Eric Taylor hizo su bond en el caso, pero el caso de él sigue. Y también estamos diciendo que vamos a seguir en casos con él, y es posible que Eric Taylor va a enfrentar más cargos en este caso, pero también será posible que vamos a estar más sospechosos en este caso.
A question for the fire marshal.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us the litany? It sounds like a litany of fire violations at the MGM that rendered it, in your assessment, uninhabitable almost.
Oh, yes, so we could just begin with the type of establishment that it was. The type of occupancy, for the number of folks that were allowed in the building, it would have required a fire sprinkler system. It would have required an alarm system, and the building hadn't either. There were multiple violations on access and egress into and out of that building. There were areas in the building that you could go into that we never had a fire out there, thank God, but folks probably would have been trapped in some of those back rooms. And so, again, these are the types of businesses that, unless we're called in literally by these smaller jurisdictions to assist, we may not know that they're out there. I will say, and to your question to the sheriff a minute ago, absolutely. Yeah, we also began to look for those types of establishments where they are permitted or licensed establishments throughout the county, because it's extremely important that all folks, and I agree with the sheriff, he's exactly right. There are so many good people out there that are doing, and are smart, solid business owners that are responsible, and they're doing the right thing. We work with them, they work with us to bring their buildings up to code. And you have folks, such as in this case, that absolutely, they were trying to fly under the radar, and they did for a very long time. And finally, we're able to bring light to that, and those are the types of it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what we found.
Could someone, and I can't recall which one, mentioned how, because this is a minor, that opened up, again, the level of investigation. I think it was, Sheriff, could you elaborate a little bit about that? About you mentioned how normally you would need to go through a certain process, but because there was a minor involved, you didn't have to do that, or?
Well, I think that was actually.
Thank you.
You mentioned this.
Yeah, so for an adult, you have to have an outcry. For a child, it's different. There's an assumption that the child didn't voluntarily put themselves in that position and doesn't have the authority to consent. There's also some other provisions in the Texas Penal Code, let's say 421, the
employment harmful to a minor.
Yeah, employment harmful to a minor, so that some of these juveniles that we interviewed had actually been photographed nude, which is a violation of the Texas Penal Code. And
Is
so
that a felony? Employment harmful to a minor, is that a felony?
It,
Yeah.
yes.
Where usually where there is prostitution and alcohol, drugs, most of them are involved in this. Do you have any leads into the presence of drugs within this specific cases or something like that?
Or organized crime for that.
Organized crime, I mean.
So for a permitted location, and some of these locations aren't permitted. They just provide alcohol. It's illegal to sell it, but they simply provide it, and they have girls dancing. But where we find if they are, so they got somebody else to represent and get the permit, that's called subterfuge, and that's a violation of our code, and we'll go pull the permit for that. So that, for us, indicates organized crime. In this particular case, I don't believe we found that.
No, we didn't,
No,
not in
so-
this particular.
You didn't find one?
But organized crime involvement. So,
And so, but with regard to their license and going forward, you said that the action was permanent against Blush.
yes, we've
And
canceled
is that
their permit.
That is an administrative action,
That's administrative action.
and that is forever against the one guy who was the owner of Blush, the one person?
Yes.
Or against the institution, or against the, how does that work administratively?
So in TABC, we carry dual authority. We have criminal and administrative authority. So in this particular situation, the Bexar County Sheriff's Department handled the majority of the criminal. The administrative part is what we picked up, and at the Blush Club, which was licensed, we filed multiple charges for human trafficking, employment harmful to a minor, and one narcotics case. I would say organized crime is do we have 3 or more people engaging in criminal activities, which would make it engaging in organized criminal activity? Sure. Do we have indications that it was cartel run or something like that? No. But there definitely was criminal activity occurring at this location on a regular basis, which is what led us, the egregious violations is what led us to take such swift and decisive action against it, closing it. To answer your specific question, is the actual location will not be allowed to sell alcohol for a year because they were canceled for human trafficking and narcotics. So either one of those will get that location. They cannot sell alcohol at that location for another year. The permittee himself will not be able to open an establishment at that location for 3 years based on those violations.
The people who were engaging in human trafficking and employment, dangerous to minors, and those seems like criminal charges to me, but this isn't, you're putting them out of business, but shouldn't there be more people charged?
That's what I'm
So I know,
Criminally?
like the sheriff said, this is an ongoing case. We're continuing to investigate it. And so I suspect that there may be additional charges going forward
against other people.
against other people, yes.
So I know you wanted the fire marshal to come up and do some Spanish, and we will certainly do that. But yes, Sue, this case continues, for sure. And like I said, I would not rule out, and I'd say, in fact, that it's very likely that there are going to be other charges. And if we do find that nexus to organize, some sort of organized enterprise, we'll certainly be treating it differently at that point as well, and appropriately.
Sheriff, entonces, la experiencia de ustedes como investigadores les dice que usualmente, lo que yo decía hace un momento, usualmente donde hay drogas, si hay prostitución y alcohol, ¿va a haber algún elemento que tiene que ver con drogas para poder vender a la gente?
La mayoría de las veces, cuando hay negocios así que hacen estas cosas de drogas, de traficando de seres humanos, hay una organización mucho atrás, un poco atrás de ese negocio. Esa búsqueda sigue en este caso. Entonces, vamos a seguir buscando, vamos a seguir hablando con los sospechosos, hablando con víctimas, y si llegamos a obtener información de eso, entonces vamos a empezar esa parte de la investigación.
Es el primer hilito entonces que van sacando.
Ahorita es una hebra que vamos sacando, y hasta que acabamos de sacar esa hebra, entonces no vamos a parar de investigar esto.
¿Tenía pregunta en español?
Sí, ¿qué nos puede decir en cuanto a las violaciones en esos edificios? En el de MGM, que había bastantes violaciones.
Bueno, sí, había bastantes violaciones, delitos contra el código de incendio aquí en el condado de Bezar. Tenía mucho material flamable dentro del edificio. Las puertas estaban candadas con cadena también. No había
lugar para salir
para la gente, y habían construido mucha cosa ilegal dentro de cuartos ilegales dentro del edificio que no permitía a la gente poder salir en caso de incendio.
¿No están ustedes yendo a inspeccionar cada en cuando? Porque todas esas violaciones son bastante evidentes.
Sí.
¿No alguien va cada mes o cada 2 meses a ver qué está pasando?
Sí, en realidad sí empleamos a oficiales que van a hacer inspecciones así, pero este negocio está dentro de los límites de la ciudad de Van Army. Entonces, como el Marshal dijo, cuando la ciudad de Van Army pide asistencia, entonces nosotros podemos meternos a ayudarle, pero hasta ese punto en tiempo, nosotros nos encargamos en las áreas del condado de Bezar, fuera de las límites de ciudades de chicas, pero cualquier ciudad nos puede hablar y nosotros vamos a ayudarles. Sí.
¿Y quién sería el primer punto de referencia? ¿Los residentes? Porque sabía que había muchas quejas ahí. Había como 80 quejas.
Sí, los residentes o el gobierno del pueblo ahí.
I believe Sue Calvert from KENS 5 just mentioned that they got a question via social media on where underage victims can go, or any victims for that matter, can go to ask for help. They can absolutely call the Bexar County Sheriff's Office at any time, 24/7, at 335-6000. They can also make contact with the Rape Crisis Center at any given time, or the Center for Missing and Exploited Children at any given time. And we'll give those numbers in the comments section of our own Facebook feed here shortly. But there is no shortage of places they can reach out to get the assistance that they need. Let me just sum up by saying this. At the Sheriff's Office, there are several tools that had not existed prior to several years ago, or several months ago even. Directly behind me is Deputy Chief Nancy Sanford. Chief Sanford came to us from the DEA and has just a lifetime of information, a lifetime of experience in setting up covert operations, just like what led into this. And so that's a tool that the Sheriff's Office didn't really possess to the extent that we wanted up until last year when this case started. We also did not have a special victims unit. We established that unit from the ground up. One of our special victims unit detectives is here. She's standing in the back. She's a very unassuming person, but she will absolutely ruin your day if you're a criminal doing these sort of things in this county. So we're not only giving ourselves the tools for success, and we're upping our game on a daily basis around here at the Sheriff's Office, but we're working hard with our partners in the TABC, in the Fire Marshal's office, and we remember this. This is going to be a blueprint for investigations moving forward. These tools that we're bringing to bear, these weapons that we're bringing to bear at the Sheriff's Office, but also this mutual partnership with our brother and sister agencies, this is not going to be the last time. And so if you are doing business, and whether you think that you're going to escape justice by skirting, staying outside the city limits of San Antonio and working in an unincorporated Bexar County, I'd say that's a huge mistake. Because we can certainly replicate this operation anywhere, and we will reach out and touch you. So if you are doing this in Bexar County, I'd suggest you pick up and move on somewhere else. We don't want you here in our county. So thank you all so much for coming out today. We really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Sheriff.